Lebanon zoning appeals for September the 6th, public hearing. Can we have roll call, please?
Okay. Chad Kiger, absent. Bruce Pauley,
Here.
Ron Edwards,
Here.
and Lori Gross. Here.
Okay, we got 3 here tonight. Got enough to have a meeting. Has everybody looked at the minutes? And if so, if there's no problem with them,
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. First item is docket number 2259, 98 Investments LLC requesting 4 development standards variances to facilitate construction of a flex warehouse building. For Matt.
Good evening, board. Hope everybody's having a good night tonight. Try not to bore you too much with this one. It's some repetitive things that we've seen quite a bit in the business park with new developments out there. If we want to start off, if we can pull up my screen here, I can start you off with a site plan. This location is just south of State Road 32 on Enterprise Boulevard, south of the Festool plant. This is one of the few remaining undeveloped vacant parcels out in our business park. It's about 3.5 acres, and the applicant, 98 Investments, is proposing a multi-tenant industrial building to be built out here. In working with staff throughout that discussion and meetings, we determined that there were 4 variances that would be required for this development. So those are what are before you tonight. I will pull up this site plan so that you can get an idea as we talk through these variance requests. So the site plan that you see in front of you, as you can see, Enterprise Boulevard is along the east side with the entrance. Parking and truck area will be on the north side of the property with the multi-tenant building along the southern edge of the parcel. The first variance in front of you is for parking area curbing. Again, like I said, we're going to hear some repetitive things that you hear for almost every development that's in the business park, but all parking and drive areas are required to have parking curbing, and this one is no different. This is one of those that's in the business park, and trucks and maneuvering don't incorporate well with curbs, but then also we have a drainage situation where we have a drainage swale that runs along the north side of the property line, so we need to sheet drain this property to that swale, and curbing would hinder that proper drainage. So the first request, the parking area curbing, the statutory criteria is pretty clear. This would not be injurious to the public health, safety, general welfare of the community. The relief would not affect neighboring property owners in a substantially adverse manner. The curb has been provided along the front portion of the parking area as you enter off of Enterprise Boulevard, but the sides to the north and to the rear would allow for sheet drainage, so it would not substantially affect the neighbors. And then lastly, the practical difficulties would be applied. If strictly applied, the UDO would generate practical difficulties on the property, and that the proper drainage would have to be reconstructed, and underground stormwater infrastructure would have to be created, which would be a challenge on this small of a property. So with that review, staff does recommend approval of the variance request to permit relief from the parking area curbing. The second variance is for parking lot interior landscaping, another one of those common requests out here in the business park. Pull up the landscaping plan for you. As you can see, the applicant has provided a substantial amount of landscaping along the eastern portion or the frontage of Enterprise Boulevard, but because of the drainage swale on the northeast section and the north side, landscaping, both interior and perimeter landscaping, would be a challenge. So the first one on the parking lot interior landscaping, it would not be injurious to the public health, safety, general welfare of the community. Staff determined that the relief would not affect the property's adjacent to this one. The request to eliminate landscaping within truck areas and parking areas is consistent with most every use in the business park. And these areas are also toward the side of the building, which would be less obvious and visible from the street frontage. And then the last one, the strict application in the terms of the UDO would result in the practical difficulties. Landscaping placed within truck access areas is susceptible to damage, the constant truck maneuvering, and also have the potential to restrict movement within those truck areas. So staff does recommend approval of the development standard variance to permit relief from the parking lot interior landscaping requirement. We have talked about the perimeter landscaping. Again, that is something that is required for non-residential parking areas. Relief is being requested from that for many of the same reasons we've discussed. The north property line contains the drainage swale, so adding any sort of landscaping up there would be injurious to that proper stormwater runoff. But the relief from that variance of parking lot perimeter would not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. The request relief to the parking area is consistent with other uses in the business park. There's also the drainage swale that would be hindered by the installation of landscaping, and then the constant truck maneuvering, the landscaping along the property line would have a significant impact on the flow of that drainage swale. So staff does recommend approval of the development standard variance request to permit relief from the parking lot perimeter landscaping requirement. And then the last requirement is for sidewalks. The UDO does require 5-foot sidewalks to be included on every street in the industrial districts. Our business park has almost 0 sidewalks in the majority of it, so relief is being requested from this particular development. The relief poses no imminent threat to the health, safety, welfare. The requested relief for the sidewalk requirement would not affect the use and value of adjacent properties, considering that no surrounding properties have access to a sidewalk system, so the exclusion of sidewalks here would have no substantial adverse effects of anyone using the business park. And then lastly, the strict application of the terms of UDO would result in practical difficulties. The street network in the business park was installed without sidewalks, and this project is a significant distance from the nearest sidewalk system. There would be no material benefit from the installation of sidewalks here, and the addition of sidewalk would create issues with the drainage swale that is along that northeast and eastern property line. And with that, planning staff does recommend approval of the development standard variance request to permit relief from the sidewalk requirement of the UDO. And as I've rushed through that, I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns that anybody has.
I think we're good. Would the applicant care to step forward?
I'm Chad Baselig. I'm the owner of 98 Investments. I'm excited about this project. It does say multi-tenant, but it is a spec building as well. So it could potentially go to one tenant, or it could go to several. Myself, I plan to not allow exterior parking, overnight or anything like that. Everything would like to be parked inside or stored away as well. Just going to, try and keep a clean presence there as well. I don't live terribly far from there, so I want it to look nice and stay nice and be a positive investment for myself and for the city.
Okay, thank you. This is a public meeting. Anybody cares to step forward?
Jeff Newman, I own the property at 195 North, 200 West. The back of our 4 acres butts up against about half of this property. The back acre is about an acre worth of walnut trees. I'm curious which direction that swell is running and why that doesn't impose any issues with us. I know over the last probably 4 or 5 years, there's been drastic increase in flooding in the back of our property, drastic increase in flooding in the field to the north of that. If you look on Google Maps, you can see even right now, they show a wet spot. Farmers had issues, I believe, with crops in that area, not being able to get his tractors through there, et cetera, different times of the year. So I would love to know how, having this much concrete, this much under roof isn't going to affect any of the neighbors. I know Don and Lois, the neighbor just to the south of us, that actually their entire back fence butts up against this. They would be here, but they have health issues. So just why there's no buffer or any type of landscape on the backside. I don't know if that's a requirement, has been a requirement, but that goes directly out into what's considered county property and all residential. So, yeah, I would like to see not this much, and certainly not this much traffic. We've seen a huge decrease in population, deer population, and other animals out there in the last 5 years or so. So it just seems like too much on this small of a lot. So as a neighbor, I would oppose it.
Thank you. Anybody else care to step forward? Okay, we'll close the public end of the meeting. And Mr. Bontrager, can you answer some questions?
Yeah, maybe just to address a couple of the issues that were brought up, if they want to bring the site plan back up. So all of the drainage within the business park is all contained and detained and within the business park. So the soil use within the planned business industrial zoning district, so the use is not a consideration here tonight. We're merely talking about the landscaping request, the sidewalk request, and the curbing request. So the issue itself is a permitted use within the planned business industrial zoning district. So if there's any other additional questions that I could answer, I'd be happy to.
The drainage, though, it will all go east?
It all goes east, yeah. So everything is collected on the site and goes east. The site itself, in terms of the building and parking area, meets all of our requirements for coverage. It's just the 4 requests that you have here tonight. So everything is collected on the site. It runs into the swale on the north side of the building and runs east out to the street and into a culvert that goes north. And actually, there's been quite a bit of discussion about how that would work, just because looking at the elevation of the site versus the elevation of that culvert, making everything work properly is part of what their engineer had to try to figure out. But that is the direction all the water is going out east towards Enterprise Boulevard.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further questions,
I'll make a motion to approve docket 22-59 as written.
I'll second.
Bruce Polly, Ron Edwards,
Aye.
and Lori Gross.
Aye.
one more issue, or non-issue, item tonight is docket 2260. Superior Auto, the location of the property is to be 1317 West South Street here in Lebanon. Property is approximately 4,200 of an acre and currently zoned planned business commercial. It's in the thoroughfare overlay district. Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Polling. Board members, let me pull up a couple of things here, so we can get started on the overview here. All right, but what's before you here tonight is a conditional use application for Superior Auto. They are a used car dealer, and they are looking to lease property here on West South Street. And here, if they would bring up the site here, just to the west here is where the Casey's gas station is proposed within the Lebanon Gateway Marketplace, and just to the east here is an existing liquor store. This property is actually owned by the same gentleman that owns a liquor store to the east, looking to lease this property. So this is the property that's going to be reused or repurposed for Superior Auto. If you recall, they are on North Lebanon Street right now, where the Taco Bell and 7 Brew is going to be redeveloping a site up there, so they're looking for a place to move. So this is one of a number of sites that they've looked at that might work for their purposes. In terms of this use here, it is within a thoroughfare overlay district. which requires a conditional use approval in order to place a used car dealership within the overlay district. Thus, the request is for you here tonight. A little bit of history on the conditional use. Actually, when the current ordinance was originally written, used car dealerships and several other uses were listed as prohibited uses within the overlay district. In 2009, that was actually changed to make it a conditional use, and so that's the direction we're heading here. In terms of how they'd use the property, let me pull this up here a little bit. So this gives you an idea of the outline. Again, as I mentioned, there's this similar ownership in between these two lots. The owner of the liquor store would like to maintain several of the parking spaces in this location here to the west of their building for their customers. So what you can see here outlined in yellow is what the Superior Auto is actually proposing to use for the used car dealership. You can see here that they've proposed, that we work with them to propose some landscaping to dress up the front of the parking lot adjacent to State Road 32 where there isn't anything now. And then also, as I go through the conditions here, we did talk to them about making sure to reserve spaces for both customer and employee parking. I know a lot of used car lots, I'm not saying this one, but a lot of them will end up with so many cars out there for sale that they don't designate spaces, or they're constantly moving. So we wanted to make sure that there are actually spaces designated for employee and customer parking, and they're actually labeled as such, so they won't be used for anything other than those spaces for customer and employee parking. In addition, as I mentioned, we wanted them to add some landscaping along the north side of this parking lot, along the west side of this front parking lot. Looking at the parking lot perimeter landscaping requirements and looking at the distance, linear feet we're talking about, it comes out to approximately 4 trees and 10 shrubs that we've asked them to place in these areas along this parking lot here. As I mentioned, this is a conditional use, and walking through those evaluation criteria, the first is that the proposed use is listed as conditional for the particular zoning district. In this case, used motor vehicle sales is a permitted use within Plain, but it's a commercial zoning district. However, this property is located within the thoroughfare overlay district, which indicates that motor vehicle sales is a conditional use. The second is that the established maintenance or operation of the conditional use will not be determined to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. And we have determined that the proposal for a used motor vehicle sales operation will not be detrimental to the public health, morals, or general welfare of the community. Criteria number 3, the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of the other properties in the immediate vicinity for lawfully permitted uses. If many of you are familiar with this corridor, we've got a number of motor vehicle repair shops in the area, body shops in the area. There's actually an auto parts store. So we actually have a number of auto-related uses in this corridor already. So in terms of looking at this for whether it would impact the use of adjacent properties, we've determined that it will not impair the use and enjoyment of other properties in the immediate vicinity. The proposed uses aren't existing commercials of the comprehensive plan or the Unified Development Ordinance. We determined that the reuse of this site for the proposed used motor vehicle sales operation is not in conflict with the City of Lebanon Comprehensive Plan or Unified Development Ordinance. The Comprehensive Plan identifies this corridor as appropriate for commercial uses. And with that, then, staff has looked at a recommendation of approval for this conditional use with a number of conditions that we would like to apply to this site. One is that the applicant reserve and leave available 7 parking spaces for employees and customers. These spaces shall be marked as employee and customer parking only and shall not be used for storage or display of vehicles for sale. The number 7 actually comes directly from the Unified Ordinance for motor vehicle sales. You're required to have a certain number for indoor sales area, an outdoor sales area, and then number of employees on the largest shift. So in looking at their indoor and outdoor sales area plus three employees, that comes to a total of 7. So the 7 is required by Unified Ordinance. That's not a specific condition we're placing. The condition, though, is to make sure that they're marked as employee and customer parking only so that they'll be reserved for that use. And the second is that the applicant install a minimum of 4 trees and 10 shrubs along the north and west perimeters of the parking area adjacent to South Street. So again, as I mentioned, that would be on this north side of the parking lot adjacent to South Street and along kind of this west side of this northern parking area. They can place those 4 trees and 10 shrubs wherever they like. We would just work with them to make sure that they're in this location and would want to approve that plan before they would install that. And then lastly, just one additional item we put on there. There currently doesn't appear to be a dumpster out on this site. And so we wanted to make sure that they're aware, and the condition was placed on here, that any dumpster placed on the site shall include a dumpster enclosure, meeting the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, so that they wouldn't just place the dumpster on this site without meeting the location and enclosure requirements for the UDO. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Being this is a conditional use, if they were to leave, does everything revert back to what it is today?
Yeah, this doesn't necessarily change the zoning of the site or anything like that. So in this case, and again, they're not making any significant improvements in terms of major structural change or anything to site. So in terms of if they would go away, this conditional use was really attached to this applicant. So it would kind of revert, it would essentially revert back to what's permitted. And then, and another user, if they were to come in and propose a used motor vehicle use, would have to come back for an additional conditional use approval.
I know they're in business to sell cars, but the last picture, can you put it back up on where the shrubs and everything go? There won't be any cars there in that area?
Yeah, there would not be. So a couple reasons. One, this is actually not their property, this grass strip out here, that's actually state right-of-way. But two, cars have to be placed on paved areas. And if you felt like we needed to make a condition of the approval such that they would make sure that all cars are placed on paved areas only, we could certainly add that one to the condition of approval.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay, would the applicant care to step forward?
Good evening, members of the board. John McDougall, Superior Auto Inc. I'm the real estate director for the group. We're currently operating on Indiana 39 and the 2400 block of Lebanon Street. Currently, that property is being sold to an alternative user, so we are leasing the property and needing to vacate. So we're relocating at the proposed facility here at 1317 North South Street. It's currently a vacant building. It's dilapidated and owned by the adjacent liquor store owner. So we are working with him to come to agreement on a lease at that property. We're finalizing terms there. And then adjacent was an old service station that was formerly used as a used car dealership group and is now, and prior to that, it was a filling station, but now it's housed by an HVAC user. So we have good relations with both those neighbors. They're happy for us being there. They're happy to see the building being improved with our relocation. And going forward, as Ben noted, we'd be doing significant improvements to the building, paint, roof, utilities, and using all local and state-based vendors on that front. Most of the front-facing parking lot is occupied by 7 vehicle spaces, 9 to the east on the right side of the building and 5 in the rear, so it won't be a burden to the street view. There'll be landscaping improvements added. We're not the typical used car dealership group. We're low sales intensive, so this site fits our needs as far as the parking of about 20 or so vehicle spaces. The average vehicle year is approximately 2013 or newer, so not a 1980s vehicle. It's all newer inventory, and again, with the improvements, we think we'd be a good addition to that corridor. So no further comments, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Your car hauler be okay to get in and out there without any restrictions?
It's tough to get in and out of that site. I think we'd be looking at potentially renting space off-site to unload and then move those vehicles there. So I don't think we're going to be pulling the semi in and out of there. But we do typically utilize a three-car trailer on a pickup truck, so that's a less intensive drop-off, so that could be feasible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it.
This is a public meeting. If anybody care to step forward, close the public end of the meeting. No further questions. Look for a motion.
I make a motion to approve the conditional use with the conditions as outlined in the report.
I second.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations. Good luck. Any other questions or concerns tonight? Well, If that's the case, our next regular scheduled meeting would be October the 3rd, here in this room at 7 PM. And I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.